Over to you, Christina.
Hello again. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the role of creative content and DAM in the digital experience with COO of Bynder, Bob Hickey. And don't forget, as he's going through, if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box at any point throughout the session, and we should have a little bit of time at the end to have a Q&A with Bob. Thank you. Over to you now.
Thank you, Christina. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to be presenting to you today. Let me first start by thanking Henry Stewart, and we're honored to be presenting and sponsoring this event here today. We've been on this journey with Henry Stewart for the better part of 10 years, where those who are intimate with the space know that we've been evangelizing, educating, and validating digital asset management in the MarTech community for the last decade. And the work that you're doing at Henry Stewart is extremely crucial, especially now more than ever, just with the elevation of digital asset management. And so we can't wait to get back into in-person events next year. And so thank you for that. I also want to thank all our presenters today. I'm privileged to share the virtual stage with you. We have a great lineup of obviously industry experts and consultants, as well as our customers who've been doing some great things within their MarTech stack, as well as within the Bynder platform, and a special guest with Salesforce, who we've been able to have a partnership with and drive tremendous amount of value to our joint customers, and really elevate content and digital asset management to drive those digital experience with the downstream platforms. And more importantly, I want to thank everyone for joining. We recognize with this is a global event and with the time zones and the changes, but also there's been online virtual fatigue. And so we really appreciate you guys joining the event and or listening to the recording, but thank you for that. As Christina had mentioned, I am the COO of Bynder. Bynder, my background, I was the GM of WebDAM. Bynder did an acquisition in 2018 of WebDAM, and I joined the organization as the Chief Operating Officer. Also want to do a shout out to whoever my team who put together this presentation, because I think that's the smallest my head has ever looked in a picture. So thank you for that. And let me get into my presentation. So I mentioned that we've been on this journey for the last 10 years. And so, this really, grew out of all the advancements in technology that we saw in 2007, 2008, 2009, where, all the growth in digital touch points, right? We had all these different platforms, websites, microsites, marketplaces, e-commerce sites, and, creative and marketers really had to change, how they were doing business, because consumers changed on how they were interacting with brands. And so, there was no such thing as store hours. Everything became 24/7. It was always online content, and brands were instantly global organizations. And so they invested so heavily into technology to respond to all these different strategies that they had to put in place across the customer journey. And then what we started seeing about 3 or 4 years ago is this convergence in workflows. And so one of the biggest things when we talk about convergence and workflows is all these investments that you made in technology. How do we get them to interact and to have a seamless workflow? And this became even more prevalent, with the global pandemic, because almost every consumer had changed their behaviors in how they interacted with brands. And so one of the biggest trends that we saw that was, started, 4 or 5 years ago, but really accelerated into 2021 was operating in this connected ecosystem. I know Teresa talked about this in her presentation, but it's really about, protecting those investments that you made in technology and really making sure that your customers are experiencing a seamless workflow. And so one of the things, not only did consumers change their behaviors or users change their behaviors, but their expectations also got elevated. And they expect personalized connections across all the different channels in which they're experiencing your brand or your organization. Not only that, but they're also expecting recommended or suggested content or recommended product materials. And more importantly, they also became more visual. And so we saw the growth in video, we saw the growth in all different file types and all different content, and they're engaging with brands on all these different devices and through social media. So these trends have started a long time ago, but they've been definitely accelerated and been heightened in 2021 because of the global pandemic. And so our vision at Bynder has always been to elevate creative marketing into the heart of the customer experience. And so that you could build these authentic relationships with either your user community or your customer base or the media or whoever may be consuming your assets. And so with our digital asset management platform, we want to set the standard when it comes to innovation and how dynamic it is and be inspired by our customers. And with that, we have seen our customers over the last 20 months do some tremendous things just within their business model. They've been able to, pivot, adjust, accelerate their digital transformation, elevate their digital experiences. Some organizations had to completely change their business model, and they had to do it in a remote fashion and through collaboration. And the creative marketing digital teams are managing the entire customer journey. And so when you listen to the Salesforce presentation, they'll talk about the customer journey and the customer experience and the roles of the different personas that play in that and across that journey. But more importantly, how content and creative content, is really driving, connections, personalization throughout this journey. And so we've been incredibly inspired by the companies that we work with and their ability to make these adjustments to their business and be able to pivot, their strategies to really step up and have their businesses thrive, with all the changes that are happening within the world. And content plays a major role in this. I mentioned how consumers are just more, inherently more visual. And so we talk a lot about digital experience. We talk a lot about digital commerce. We talk a lot about the digital economy. I'll submit to you that, the backbone behind the digital economy and the digital experience is the visual experience and the visual economy. And, you start to see people talk more about visual commerce and, just how the consumers and users are behaving, when they interact with, a website or a microsite or a marketplace, and, to really, capture their attention and to really connect with them. It's really, relevant, engaging visual content that really takes place there. So what we're seeing is 55% of users are interacting with websites through mobile devices. Be able to drive a video connection is more prevalent, and the visual content is really driving the connectivity in this marketplace. And we see it firsthand within our customer base. And so when we talk about partnering with our organizations and our clients on really helping them scale their content operations, you heard Teresa talk about being a content engine that really drives these digital experiences and these user experiences. Just in the last year alone, we saw a 2x growth in our visual content. A lot of it was driven by the video content and the growth of video marketing, coming out of the ad space and moving more into the experience space. And we saw 3x growth just in 2021. And, average, we're managing, 400% more content or assets within our platform across our customer base. And what we're also seeing is, expanded use case. So, obviously we operate in a digital first economy, but it's not a digital only economy. And so when we take a look at, packaging or branding, marketing campaigns, product e-commerce, social media, user generated content, what we're seeing is, where digital asset management used to be a functional area, now it's becoming expanded use cases and being leveraged and managed throughout the entire enterprise. And so even more the reason why you need that connected ecosystem and to help drive the customer engagement. And so what we're also seeing, if we just look at, the people who signed up for today's event, we're seeing this expand across all different titles throughout the organization. And so when we look at the operational side, digital asset management has been around for quite some time, and the operational benefits of really breaking down silos and making sure that you have a centralized repository, a system of record for all your creative content that you can easily find, search, and repurpose that content. And then we moved into the functional area, which is the user community, predominantly, creative and marketing and digital teams, where they collaborate, align, and really, operate with speed of execution. And then at the strategic level, this is really about helping brands and organizations compete in the world today. So we've always felt, creative content, when we first, started on this journey, always played a role in supporting every corporate initiative and involved in every business interaction. However, it's become more prevalent that if you don't have a really strong digital strategy in place today centered around creative content, we're starting to see opportunities be missed, and or your ability to compete in the marketplace. And so, when I talk about, digital asset management being around for quite some time, it started off, early on in broadcasting and, publications. And so typically these were on-prem solutions, very specific to verticals, dealing with a lot of raw media file storage. And then we saw the adoption of the cloud providers in the early, 2010, 2011 area, and became the system of record predominantly in the functional areas of creative and marketing, and really supporting omni-channel and really on the campaign side. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we're entering this third wave where it's become more mission critical, and the system of record is really supplying all the different digital touch points in the marketplace today. And so some of the things that we've done at Bynder to help you compete in this area is really not only work on our API and our software development kit, but we've launched a unified compact view, which allows you to pull up your entire asset library on whatever subsystem that you're working on. And so you could really have speed of execution where you could operate within that system and have access to all your finished approved assets. In addition to that, we also launched dynamic asset transformation, where you could actually deliver the right derivative based off the channel or device that your user is experiencing the content on. And we wouldn't be able to do this without a robust partner community. And I mentioned some of our strategic partners as well. So it's a pretty exciting time for digital asset management. It's a pretty exciting time for creative marketing teams and digital teams to really align with the digital strategy to help you compete in this growing, not only tech stack, but in this growing demand on the digital side. Okay, and so to touch upon kind of the derivative side. So if you look at all your different potential, a sample set of all the different platforms that may be experiencing your content, right? How do you serve up to all these different platforms, but not only the different content sizes or derivatives that you may need to execute on, but also the different platforms. And so when we look at digital asset management and our platform Bynder, we really look at ourselves as the system of record for all your visual content, and not only be able to create and manage that, but also be able to distribute that in the right optimized transformation of that asset to however your organization is consuming it. And so this is a familiar slide. I know Teresa had a very similar slide to this as well. And on the outer perimeter, we talk about all the different technologies that you may have within your ecosystem, and how that's at the heart of the digital experience side of it. But also on the inner circle here, you really have your user community and all the traditional workflows that we've seen when we first started off at digital asset management, where view, search, download, your sales teams, your internal comms teams, your media, whoever may be consuming your assets. And so really managing all your different campaigns and your productivity there. And so when we take a look at a comprehensive digital asset management platform, it's really about the asset lifecycle of create, manage, and distribute, and having fully not just an ecosystem that you could connect into, whether it's project management or whether it's CMS on the delivery side, but also having functionality that helps you scale your content operations, automate as much as possible throughout that process, and be able to deliver a speed of execution and alignment and that trust and consistency that the users and your consumers expect. And so we've been working very hard at Bynder, not only developing technology, we also acquired some technology to really help on the create side. On the manage side, we've always felt like we've been very strong and we set the standard there. And then really investing heavily on our compact view and dynamic asset transformation to automate a lot of the delivery of the assets, depending on the subsystem that you're working on downstream. And so, I talked about, consumer expectations and behaviors have been changing. Here are some of the statistics or some of the trends that we're seeing here. But it's only the demands and the expectations are only going to continue to grow. When we take a look at the next generation out there, and even the wave four of digital asset management, we may be looking at the metaverse world. And admittedly, I'm going to have to turn that over to the younger generation to support me on that. But the generations that are coming up today, they're growing up on video, they're growing up on technology, and all of a sudden, digital transformation is going to be out the window, and it's just going to be the digital world that we live in, and that's just going to be how the businesses need to operate. And so, organizations have gone through transformation, but there are a lot of businesses that are just, starting out in a digital-only economy or digital-first economy. And for us, and what we see out there in the marketplace, and if you talk to a lot of analysts, content is the foundation of this. So, we say content is the king and queen at Bynder, because we really feel that developing content at scale is really, a core element of driving these experiences and driving those authentic, relationships. And how you manage that throughout your entire life cycle. Whether it's through your suites of DXP, social, CMS, PIM systems, e-commerce, depending on the vertical that you work with, you're seeing a growing tech stack. But more importantly, when you're looking at tech, purchases today, one of the biggest requirements is, how does that integrate into my other technologies and protect my other investments or maximize the value of the other investments that I made throughout my organization. And content is key. However, it's not the only thing that's obviously important to drive in the strategy. And this is why partnerships with Salesforce are so important, because they control the customer data, and they understand all the analytics through the growth of their business. And so when you take a look at being able to embed, your asset library onto, for example, the Salesforce system, whether it's Marketing Cloud or Commerce Cloud, and being able to pull up that entire library and have all the customer data, have the analytics and all the experiences that the customer has had with their 360 view of the client, and then to be able to serve up the right content to the right person at the right time, is really part of the strategy that we're working on with some of our partners and within the community that we're seeing out there. And so the industry has evolved. The industry has evolved very quickly and has been accelerated. And it's not uncommon that we look at, where 5-6 years ago we were looking at doing 1 or 2 integrations, but now we're really seeing requirements for 7 to 10 integrations based off of company's ecosystem. And so the one thing that we always work on, okay, so this is a sample of one of our clients. We have hundreds of these marketecture slides of our clients and how they see their infrastructure working and how their martech stack working. But we really see, DAM at the heart of this infrastructure and this ecosystem. And, one of the things that we always look at is, how we could continue to help evolve and be dynamic, what partnerships that we need to form, what integrations do we need to build that are out of the box to really help with speed of execution, time to value, and driving, more importantly, that competitive advantage that our clients need in the marketplace today. But just to walk you through this, and I know that I think there were some other examples, and we'll show other examples when our customers talk about their use cases and their technology stack. But it's been really tremendous and inspiring to see what brands and organizations and teams have been able to do, in particularly over the last 20 months. But more importantly, we've been on this journey, like I said, for 10 years, and over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been really seeing that expectation of brands and organizations step up, and being able to service that has been an honor and privilege for us at Bynder. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Bob. Really appreciate that presentation. I think that if anybody's thinking about, well, what do integrations mean for me, or what would this actually help me do? I think that last case study was a really good example of how it can work. And I think we've all felt the impacts of what you were talking about today, kind of from both sides. So, as customers ourselves, we're all looking or expecting now that personalized experience. I sometimes I look for the mistakes in the personalization engines. What are they recommending to me that Actually, I'm not that interested in, if you go on Amazon and, baby books are popping up, I think, oh, what is that for? Um,
So I
but
always tell the story of my 16-year-old daughter. We were watching a movie, and next thing I know, she's buying a pair of jeans because a site recommended it to her, and she was like, "I have to have these jeans. There's no more fitting room. There's no more trying it on, how it looks. It's just she's buying it off an image because the brand recommended it to her, and she's doing it lying on the couch while we're watching a movie. So it's a pretty amazing how our buying habits have changed.
yeah, it's too easy, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately.
I love that. Yeah. And I think we've all seen it from the opposite side as well, which is, we within the companies we're working with, we're seeing lots more tools come about, and the need for integrations and more content being pushed out onto more channels. And, we're seeing this live and in person. So it's a fascinating world, and it's great to see the way that you're able to bring the technologies together. Um, Now you mentioned, yeah, of course, you're seeing an increase in storage, an increase in video production, and then you mentioned an increase in integration. So can you talk a little bit more about, you said that some companies have gone from what would typically have been kind of 3 or 4 integrations to now, I think you said 7 to 10 integrations. What
Yeah.
what sort of integrations are you seeing now?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So, several years ago when we first started, we were working with a lot of creative and marketing teams, and the integrations were typically on the front end, on the create side. So we saw a lot on, Adobe Creative Cloud. Obviously, that's still prevalent today. Sketch, Figma, Shutterstock, all these different sites. And so a lot of the requirements were very functionally areas supported with creative and marketing teams, and where they were creating their content and where they were either purchasing their content if it was a stock photography, or user generated content. And that was kind of early on. As digital asset management became known as the system of record and got elevated in the marketplace and became part of the digital strategy, a lot of the connections have started on the front end, or the downstream. We've always been very big in social media and CMS, but now it's very prevalent in e-commerce, and it's very prevalent in these micro sites that companies are developing, or these personalized sites that they're creating to drive authentic relationships. And so what historically started on the create side that helped us manage the content is now being transformed onto the delivery side. And really, how do you deliver those assets in an automated way with speed of execution and time to value? And so that's really the big shift that we saw, was shifting from the front end to the downstream.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's an important distinction to make, and something to look at when you're designing integrations, and how that ecosystem is going to work together. Questions come in from Mark, who is asking, have you experienced customers asking for integrations between DAM and records management?
That's an interesting question. So we do see a couple of areas to it, and it's one of these things where we have seen that integration. It's not necessarily a mainstream one where we see it on a majority of our customers, but it really depends on the organization, because we work with some iconic brands that have had these asset libraries, and been in business 100 years. And so they have this vast library that they've typically built within their own custom built homegrown solution. And we see a lot of requirements to integrate with that, with those solutions out there. Obviously, that is their archive, and that is their historical content and their records that they keep. And they use us more for their active, more dynamic content that is really leveraged in their day-to-day operations today. And so we have done those integrations. We have a pretty robust API SDK kit. It's unfortunately not out of the box. So when we talk about out of the box integrations, are integrations that are mainstream that we build out. But we have a pretty vast and growing SI community, system integrator community, that really helps with those integrations.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, we're not all low code, no code yet. Are
Exactly.
we? All right, and we've got a good question from Brendan as well, asking about integration planning. So when you've got a customer who's selecting a new DAM or selecting Bynder as a DAM, do you also start talking about integrations right from the get-go, or do you wait until that media library and the core DAM is
Yeah.
implemented first?
Yeah, it's very much situational based, and it really depends on their current state. So, a lot of times, if we find a lot of first-time investors in DAM, or they're using subsystems that weren't necessarily, or systems that weren't necessarily created designed for creative content, and so we always want to put integrations, in the forefront of the planning session. However, based off of the current state and the speed of execution, what we typically see is a phased approach if you don't have a dam today. So let's get all your assets organized. Let's get all your assets in one place. Let's get the teams collaborating. And then, the second phase, we could really talk about connecting to all your systems and your technologies. And the one biggest thing that we're seeing today is an order of magnitude, which are the must-have integrations that you need to have to maximize value. And then we have, the nice to haves, or the secondary, and then the tertiary, integrations that they're looking at. So it's pretty comprehensive in what we're seeing with recent RFPs, and how our teams and how our we have some specialists that work with organizations on their designing, but it's really contingent on their current state and what they're looking to accomplish, and that's how we start working with them on the design phase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen something similar and you were talking about how to prioritize the integrations. I've seen companies who actually go down the route of doing a separate business case for each integration to try to figure out which one's going to bring us the most value and which one do we need to do first. It's a whole nother business analysis, isn't it?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why I shared that last slide at the end, and we have a library of those slides, because we're so integral with our customers in launching and deploying their digital asset management system, and so sharing what other companies are doing has been a big benefit for prospects and companies in the research and learning stage.
Mm-hmm. All right, one last question before we wrap up. Oh, there's more questions coming in. If we don't get to all of the questions, please do find Bob in the chat or in the community, and you can have a specific talk to him about any more questions that you have. Tony's asked us here, how often are you seeing PIM being adopted by organizations, and how often are you seeing those integrations now with DAM?
Yeah, so it's becoming commonplace. Obviously, PIM is very vertical specific, and sometimes channel specific. Depending on obviously consumer brands, consumer packaged goods. That have a lot of product and a lot of product SKUs. So when you take a look at kind of the marketing content that goes along with the product content, that integration is pretty seamless. And in the diagram that I showed, that was, a consumer brand that had a formal PIM, and how Bynder works with that PIM, and, what we serve up to downstream, and then what the PIM syndicates to as well, because there's some functionality in PIM that makes it easier for, speed of execution and delivery of the content across multiple marketplaces or distributors that you may have online. And so it's pretty commonplace. We have, out of the box integrations with several of the top PIM providers. We've been working pretty closely with them. And so it's a pretty common workflow based on certain verticals.
Yeah, more and more too, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Bob. Really appreciate that session. And for anybody, again, who has any further questions for Bob, go find him on the platform and have a chat.
Yeah,
all right.
And thank you again, Christina. I really appreciate it. It's and thank you to everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it, Bob. All right, so up next here in track 1, join Edrington for Dam and a Dram, local yet global, whiskey from Scotland to the rest of the world. That sounds like a fun one. Or head over to track 2 to join Mars in Dam's new, more strategic role, the personal and organizational implications. All right, see you all in about 5 minutes. Thanks for joining. Bye.